So in part one of the Introduction to Surface Plate Tools video, I believe I neglected to mention the accuracy of height gauges and test indicators when they're loaded on. And I normally have some numbers to put up on the slides and we discussed that. And I just neglected to do that. But what I want to explain is the accuracy of a height gauge in particular is dependent on how far you travel. And the manufacturer will typically tell you the most error at the full stroke of travel. So it might be about 2 thousandths if you travel the full stroke. And that just has to do with how perpendicular the bar is, how much error is involved in the motion and reading the dial when it stops. So you typically on a 12-inch height gauge or so, I would say you might see 2 thousandths of error on the full stroke, a thousandth of error on half the stroke, and it follows somewhat of a linear pattern. And so check with the manufacturer because they will state how much error you'll see at a maximum. Sometimes there's a formula involved, sometimes there isn't. A test indicator is very much the same way. The more that you deflect the indicator, the more error that it could introduce. So if you just zeroed up here and worked with your deflection there, you might get a little less error than if you zero it at much more pressure. And these numbers I don't really have for you for a test indicator. I'd say you have about a tenth of error usually. They're usually manufactured to a tight tolerance, but it will go up the more it rotates around. So a lot of people will put just a little bit of pressure to minimize the error. And as I mentioned, I like to go about halfway through stroke so that I don't stroke out. But that's a preference that you can decide. So as an example, if I'm going to be measuring, this block, maybe the angle block has let's say it's the 610 step height. So if I zero on the bottom of the rock, and then I go up to my 610 step height, so I can't move the dial again, I have to just use the pressure. Seen some people tap it into place, and that sometimes works. All right, so I'm reading about 607. Now, that's not too important for what I'm explaining now, but we move 0.607, so whatever amount of error the height gauge travel introduces, we got 0.607 of it. We don't exactly know what it is. But now if I'm going to measure the overall height, which according to the print is 4 inches, here, well, I'm traveling a lot more, so I may be introducing a lot more error. And we really just don't know. Oh, you know what? I just did the thing you're not supposed to do. I just moved the dial to set 0 when I was not supposed to do that. So I'm going to read 0 at the bottom. 0, 0, 0. Yep, I did move it. So all right, we'll continue, measure our overall height. And there we go. And I'm reading about 4 inch and 1/1000th. See if I can get that into the camera shot. Yeah, there's a little parallax there, but 4 inch and 1/1000th reading here. So more travel equals more error. Now I don't have anything more accurate than this to try and verify how tall this is. But one way I can try to verify it is to introduce a Joe block, which I'm going to do in the next video, but I'll give you a quick preview. Is we can remove the error of the height gauge out of the equation by zeroing on a Joe block, which has a very precise distance, more accurate than my height gauge, more accurate than even my indicator, and we do a comparison measurement or a transfer measurement. So I have this zeroed at 4, and then we're going to do a comparison to it, and I get about the same as I got with the height gauge. I would say maybe 2 or 3 tenths more showing than I had with the height gauge. So there was a difference. I had a little bit less than 4.001, and now at certain places, I'm reading about the same or a little bit more in certain places. So overall, just remember, the more you travel, the more potential error you're introducing, but you do have some methods to remove that from the equation of the error and lock it in place and transfer the error you're using to a Joe block, which is going to be one of the topics I cover in the gauge accessories surface plate video. So anyway, next up will be part 2, where I'll talk about drop indicators, and these have the same situation. The error is going to be based on how far you travel, and you can minimize that introducing some other blocks to minimize the travel. So check out that video, and I'll see you in a moment for the next video. Thank you.